The original Fire Emblem was arguably the first tactical RPG, so Rekka no Ken, the 7th entry in the series, sticks to most of the basics of tactical RPG convention. Your units move on a grid, and the number of squares they can move each turn varies depending on whether they're a mounted unit or an on-foot unit. Mounted units can traverse more squares on normal terrain but have trouble with forests and can't pass mountains at all. On-foot units may not be able to travel as many spaces as mounted units, but are less hindered by forests and mountains. There are also Pegasi riders and Wyvern riders who travel by air and possess the most freedom of movement, but their relative frailness acts as an equalizer. The combat in Fire Emblem takes into account many different systems. There is a melee weapon triangle that acts like rock, paper, scissors. Swords are good against axes, axes are good against spears, and spears are good against swords. To add more complexity, there are weapons of each class that act as opposites to this rule. For example, Lance Reavers are swords that are good against lances, but weak against axes. Then there are bows that are highly effective against flying units, but can't counterattack if attacked at close range. Lastly, there are magic wielders of different varieties. Anima magic, also known as elemental magic, which consists of fire, wind, and thunder. Then there's dark magic and light magic, and just as the melee users, there's a magic triangle: light magic beating dark magic beating all anima magic, and anima magic beating light magic. Then of course there are healers, which restore HP and remove status ailments and can temporarily increase defense. The oddest classes in Fire Emblem are the Bard and the Dancer. They can buff their teammates with dances and songs, but also have the ability to reinvigorate one of their comrades so that they can act again during the same turn. The unfortunate, but also strategic part of Fire Emblem is that the weapons degrade after each use. The better the weapon is, the less uses it has before it breaks. This adds another layer of thought to each attack. Should I use the iron sword that has 40 more uses on this enemy, or should I use my killer edge that has 20? Depending on how strong the enemy is, the iron sword may not even pierce the armor, but for weaker enemies, an iron sword may still kill them, and you won't have to waste one of your better weapons. Once characters reach level 10, if you have the right item, you can upgrade or evolve them to their higher class. For instance, a knight becomes a general, or an archer becomes a sniper. Fire Emblem is most known for its permadeath mechanic, where when an ally dies, they don't come back, unlike most tactical RPGs where you have a few turns to revive a fallen party member before they die, or, I don't know, turn into a crystal. Fire Emblem isn't so forgiving. And with parties consisting of up to 18 members, that's a lot of micromanaging to make sure no one dies in your 30+ missions. This being the first game released in the States, though, they did make it so when one of your members dies in the tutorial, they can come back for the next part. After that, though, it's a bit of an Aerith situation. I think the thing that surprised me the most about Fire Emblem, never having played one before, is the linearity of the game. The shops and villages you visit are actually visited during the battles. The rest of the story unfolds in cutscenes, and the only real control you have is by unlocking optional side quests. There is no overworld to explore. Thankfully, the main quest is long and interesting. This does present an odd situation in the game that I'm not sure I like. I can't grind. I'm so used to having the option of leveling up my characters out of the main quest that not being able to feels weird. I suppose it makes the game more balanced and challenging, so I can't really hold it against it though. As for the graphics, you're playing a tactical RPG game, so I hope you're not expecting too much. That said, the sprites, the animation of the sprites, and the character portraits are very well done. The only thing that bothers me really is their creepy blinking. I don't want to go too much into the story, just give you an idea of what you're in for. The game starts with Lynn's story and the quest for her last living relative. After that, it moves to Eliwood's story and his quest for his missing father, and by the end of that story, the main villain is well established, and the rest of the game focuses on stopping that villain. It's typical fantasy fare, but it does the job. The little stories of all the characters you gather along the way, though, are what give the game its real personality. The music is about as good as it gets for a Game Boy Advance game. It was composed by
Tsujiyoko Yuka
and
Saki Haruyama. Tsujiyoko Yuka
is known for her work on the other Fire Emblem games, the Paper Mario games, and the 2 Super Scope games for the Super Nintendo, for some reason. And
Tsujiyoko Yuka
also seems to have worked on some other Fire Emblem and some Paper Mario titles. The themes are memorable. The only downside to Fire Emblem is the sometimes cheap layout of the levels that punish players not because of any lack of skill, but lack of clairvoyance. You didn't expect an enemy that you couldn't see to strike you with a long-range magic attack that you've only seen once before in the entire game? Well, too bad, because now you have to play the same hour-long mission again. Overall, though, Fire Emblem is a very fun, challenging, and good tactical RPG that I highly recommend. And to think that after 14 years of playing Melee, I've finally beaten a Fire Emblem game. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.
Take me higher, higher, baby.